Welcome to the Collaborative. I'm your host, Sydney Walker, along with Ryan Ballas. Today, we are joined by Karen Ramming. Karen is a senior manager of social media for the Golden State Warriors and Chase Center. She develops and implements social strategy for all of their handles. She previously was a social media manager for the Pac-12 network. Ramming graduated from the University of Oregon and has years of experience in PR and communications. So welcome.
Thank you.
First, we have Sid's This or That UO edition. So first up, Skinner's Butte or Spencer Butte?
Spencer's Butte.
Tracktown or Doco?
What time of day is it?
Nighttime, like 3 a.m.
Oh, Doco.
Like, good choice.
Yeah, with a 4-pack of cookies.
That's what I'm talking about.
Market of Choice or Safeway?
Safeway.
And lastly, Autzen Stadium or Matthew Knight Arena?
Ooh, I feel like with my industry, I should say Matt Knight Arena.
Alrighty.
So you've been in the racing circuit for a while now. So you're used to the athlete aspect. When did you realize that you really wanted to have a career in sports?
Yeah, so I have been running and racing for a long time. I was never at the level to warrant any kind of like serious media attention. I think the most that I ever got was my like junior year of high school. So I had some of it from the athlete perspective, and certainly when I was at Oregon being friends with some of the student athletes there who were a little bit more used to it, I got to see some of it through their lens a bit. But I really realized that I wanted a career in sports media. I was interested when I was an undergrad, and then about a year or two into my job at Pac-12 Network is when it like really clicked for me and solidified that like this is the career path that I want to go down and seriously pursue.
Pac-12 seems to be a very welcoming community, as multiple people tend to transition to that role after they graduate college. What was your biggest takeaway after managing multiple social platforms for 3 years?
My time at Pac-12 was incredibly valuable. The first year that I was there, I actually moved down to the Bay for that job. What was soon to be boss at Pac-12, he was a track and field fan, and he was actually following the Track 10 USA accounts, and he noticed a shift in the accounts, which was when I took them over, and he was like, hey, this is good. And so he had somebody on his staff actually like reach out to me, and we were DMing, and he was like, we're always hiring freelance social media producers. Like, it's part-time work, but like if you want to move to the Bay and have a job, like it's right here. So I decided to take the leap and go to Pac-12. And that first year I was working as a full-time bartender in the city, but then also part-time at Pac-12 Network. The hours weren't guaranteed. The hours were weird because it's sports, but it was a foot in the door kind of approach. The second year that I was there, I actually got moved up to a full-time social media producer. And then the third year that I was at Pac-12, I was managing the entire social team. So I'd say that the knowledge that I got from that job, it's twofold. One of them is actually the technical experience of like managing multiple social platforms, like you mentioned, and just the time, effort, planning that goes into it, understanding the stakeholders in literally everything that you put out from a corporate handle. But then the other part of it was just learning how companies work and how the world of offices and corporate America works. Both of my parents are farmers, so I just like did not have any idea like what an office was like. And so I was able to learn the ropes very quickly at Pac-12. And again, it goes back to what I was talking about with Curtis. Pac-12 really trusts so many of their employees and gives them opportunities to cover events or to advance in their career or to move laterally throughout the company to try out different departments. So that way they can like develop their careers quickly in the sports media world.
So when you sit down day to day and you're planning social media for the Warriors, how do you decide what content is not only beneficial for the team, but for the fans viewing your social media as well?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a twofold, like when we plan our social media strategy, we first look at it from the entire year. You know, we are in the meetings over the summer when we develop the next season's slogan, the look and feel, all of those aspects to make sure that they work on social. And then we look at our data from the previous year. We look at the types of content that perform better or worse. You know, like if images outperform videos, how can we transition there? If the league is now ranking teams based off of video views, then okay, we should probably stop using GIFs and start using short looping videos instead. So all of those things we tackle during the off season. It's just a ton of planning. And then during the actual season, every month or so, we look at the calendar ahead and we input the events that are guaranteed to not move. So these things are anniversaries, historical dates, birthdays, games, everything like that. And then the content that gets filled in around that, most of it is reactionary. It's impossible to completely plan out and schedule even a full day ahead because, as is testament to these past 6 months, like the world is completely unpredictable. And when you're planning and prepping social content, you want to make sure that you're not being tone deaf, you're not burying your head in the sand, and that the content that you're putting out reflects what's going on both in the organization and the world and with the players. So it can be as big as Black Lives Matter. It can be a player injury. Whatever's happening, we need to make sure that our social content is addressing and reflecting that. So those kinds of things, it's day to day and just monitoring fan sentiment, player sentiment, and headlines.
So you mentioned the Warriors are a championship team, but this past year they had a down season. What's an example of an engagement strategy that you and your team plan to keep the community excited for future seasons?
So first, thank you for just calling it a down season. I think that is a very polite way to address what happened. Yeah, this season was super, super weird. Our initial season plan was supposed to be focused around it being the first year in a new arena. You know, we just had this whole, what we were calling internally the Bridge campaign, which was focusing on our move from Oakland to San Francisco. And the end of the Bridge campaign was supposed to be a year-long celebration of the new arena and continuing our whole Bay Area fan base. And that became obvious like a few games in, pretty much around when Steph broke his hand, that wasn't gonna happen. So when that happened, the first thing that we did was we aligned internally. I report to the vice president of brand marketing, and she's really good at her job, and she's incredibly transparent and just kind of like, okay, let's get shit done kind of person. And then, so I aligned with her, and then I aligned with our vice president of public relations. He just has a pulse on everything that's going on inside the organization and outside of it. And I worked with them because I realized that, you know, typically when you have a good season, your content sings. You know, like you have so many more highlights to play with and you have so many more records. Like when Steph and Clay were both active, it was like every other game you basically had to prepare for an NBA record to potentially get broken. So that wasn't going to happen anymore. And so I was like, okay, we have a young team, a bunch of faces that people don't recognize. We need to get our audience familiar with these guys, and we need to get our audience to care about these new players as human beings. So that way the loyalty that they feel to the Steph, the Clay, the Draymonds of the world, they can start to feel that way toward the Jordan Pooles and Eric Pascals of the world as well. And to get people familiar with players, you're going to need more access, and you're going to need to be a bit more loose in the kinds of content you create. So that was the big shift for us this year, is we had to, and we did focus a lot more on our rookies and a lot more on our younger guys and two-way players and our G League team. So that way we could get their faces and get their stories in front of our online audience.
I think that's a great learning experience because everyone's so used to seeing Steph and Clay. It's great to put those rookies up there.
Yeah, and I think that they've enjoyed it as well. They seem to have, at least.
So Karen, over your career, you've been a lot of different places and worked on a lot of different projects, but whether it's a post you've performed really well on, or a certain video that you and your team put together, or a specific PR campaign that you did, has there been a favorite project of yours thus far?
The last regular season game at Oracle Arena, I don't know if anybody watched that game or if anybody's a Warriors fan, but we rolled back out the We Believe uniforms. You know, they're the white uniforms that say Warriors across the chest. They have that beautiful like orange and blue coloring, and people were yelling at us all season long to bring these jerseys back. And then about a week before the last game, I get pulled aside by my boss and then the vice president of public relations. And they're like, hey, like this is super, super down low, but like, we're going to bring the uniforms back for the last regular season game. And literally maybe like 12 people know, you know, the guy who's in charge of putting the uniforms in the locker knows, the people that create the uniforms for us at Nike know, but like the players didn't even know. It was a complete surprise. And so I was like, holy shit, like that's massive. And I was like, this is great because trust, like it goes back to trust. You know, stuff gets leaked all the time. There's like the Wojs and the Shams of the world. It just seems like nothing's a secret anymore. And so I was like, here's our opportunity to actually have a secret and to like show the world something cool that we did for our organization, our fans, and our players. And so we had that level of trust. And then the day of the game, I got pulled aside by a vice president of public relations again. And he was like, you know, like, you and one videographer can go in the locker room before the game and capture the guys' reactions to seeing these uniforms for the first time because they still don't know that they're coming. And I was like, holy shit. And like, that was the only time that season that we were allowed in the locker room at all. And it was for this massive moment. And so it was just yet another like piece of trust that they were showing in me and my team to be able to execute on this. And so I was in the locker room and I had the digital cell phone and I was capturing the reactions, and it was just like, there's not a lot of times in the world where you get to just experience other people's like raw joy in moments. And just like getting to like hear these guys like unfiltered reactions to this thing that they've been wanting for so long, it was really, really cool. And then because we were the only media people in there, we were able to, you know, like stitch their reactions together and then put together a fuller package later on. And we had the exclusive on it, which also just given how the world works and the internet and media work very rarely happens. So I think that was my favorite thing so far.
Yeah, that's a really awesome story. And I think that's something that all of us got to watch and see. And so that's really cool to hear like the inside perspective of how that all went down.
For anyone who wants to work in social, what type of content is important to produce on their own platform?
So as far as your own platforms, I think, well, it depends on like what area of social that you want to get into. You know, if you're looking to be a graphic designer, then obviously like showcase your designs on your platform, maybe with like a watermark or something, because everything gets stolen these days. Same thing if you want to go into like video, there you go, video. If you want to do something closer to what I do, where it's more of like a funnel of information, Swiss Army knife project manager, just like all rolled into one, then I would say use your platforms to amplify the projects that you were working on. There is, you know, the fine line of amplifying your own work without being egotistical. And so being able to find that line and like walk on it, and being able to amplify the projects you worked on, amplify your coworkers, use your platforms to network. That's going to be the most valuable thing.
Thank you so much for hopping on today. It was great talking to you, a fellow UL alum. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Ducks. And yeah, my DMs are always open. Sydney, you have my email. So if anybody ever wants to chat or anything, then just drop me a line.
Awesome. Sweet. Thanks, Karen. It's always great having people on, but it's even better when we have a Duck on. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Go Ducks. Thank you,
That's
everyone.
what I'm talking about. Have a good one.